Hi everyone. A couple of quick notes about the video you're about to see. A little bit of terminology issues that I've had lately. Sometimes my brain gets a lock and I start using words interchangeably. GeoAngle had recently pointed out on my recent video that I was using the term equivocate when I actually meant to use the term equate. And I thought, oh bother, because I'd already recorded another video that I've already uploaded and just hadn't set to public yet. And I went and watched that video, which is about to follow. And early in the video I said equate, and I thought, oh goody, I avoided that. And then later in the video I said equivocate again. So in this video, when you hear me say equivocate, I mean to say equate. The other thing is, when I'm talking about gay and lesbians' rights to marry in this video, I use the term legitimize. And I think a better term would be recognize. So please, when you hear me say legitimize or to make legitimate, I mean to recognize. And with that, let's have a look at the video. I'd like to talk for a moment about poisoning the well. This is something I think we're all potentially capable of on either side of the great debate. I'm certainly not immune myself, but it can be more blatant at times than others. And I've seen this more often with the gay and lesbians' right to marry debate. I've seen on more than one occasion on the O'Reilly factor where Bill O'Reilly will make the slippery slope argument, which I think is an attempt, a deliberate one, to poison the well. He'll say, well, if we allow gays and lesbians to marry, what's next? Eventually somebody's going to want to be able to marry their goat, for instance. And I think this is a deliberate attempt because, of course, first of all, it's kind of a straw man argument, right? I mean, that's not what's being proposed. But it's an attempt to replace that image in the person's mind who's watching the show of a reasonable request by gays and lesbians to have a social and legal legitimacy to a life that they're actually probably already living. The majority of these people, I think, are already cohabitating and living as married couples. To replace that with an image of a man marrying his goat and whatever manner of deviancy that might involve. And people certainly object to that, and so I think it kind of closes off their reasoning centers and their minds are kind of tainted in that direction. It's a clear poisoning of the well, as far as I'm concerned. And I've seen this recently with a Christian YouTuber who was asking the question, what, in a secular world, what is the definition of marriage? I think this was a poisoning of the well, a little bit more veiled, perhaps done in this manner to avoid the accusation that they're poisoning the well. But I think it's a poisoning of the well, maybe with an eyedropper instead of a pitcher, but nonetheless, the effect is the same. I think it gets people's reasoning centers closed off a bit. Because what he did was he asked the question, what is marriage to you? He said, to me, it's one man, one woman for life. It's scriptural. I find that interesting. As an aside, I don't see a lot of lobbying against divorces or banning remarriage, but I digress. He asks the question and then he gives a bunch of examples. So he starts to paint the picture for us. Now he gets, from one man and one man, one woman and one woman, he moves into polygamy. One man and three women, perhaps, etc., etc. Many examples of these wildly polygamous relationships, which is not what's at issue here. That's a separate discussion. It's a discussion we can have, but that's not what's being proposed at the moment. But then he moves into the inanimate objects, and this is where I definitely say he's making an attempt to poison the well, to replace the image that we might have in our minds of a reasonable request by a couple that are already cohabitating to have social and probably most importantly legal legitimacy to their union with an image of a man marrying a seat cushion. However preposterous that might be, or a person wanting to marry their dog or whatever. And I think despite the fact that he veiled this, he couched this as questions, he's still painting the picture. This guy is from North America. He knows what the proposal is here. He knows, I think, to a large degree, what the secular definition of marriage kind of is. But either way, if you really want to know that, then you just ask that question. You don't poison the well by putting out a whole bunch of examples, some of which are disgusting possibly, and some of which are preposterous. There are other examples I've seen recently. I got involved in a bit of a dust-up with another Christian YouTuber recently who was asking for balance in the discussion. He objected to an atheistic YouTuber's video that was attributing parents' abuse of their 6-year-old child to religion because they claimed to believe that he was possessed by demons. And he wanted to see some balance in the conversation. And of course, he sort of went all the way over to the Hitler and the Mao and Pol Pot and even Jeffrey Dahmer examples to make his case, which the problem with that, I think, just as another aside, is it's not an exactly, I don't think you can have balance in that discussion, primarily because atheism is not prescriptive. Religion is largely prescriptive. That's what it is. Now, you could say people misrepresent, people misunderstand, people are taking things out of context. That's a different argument. But to say that Jeffrey Dahmer attributed what he did to his atheism and his belief in evolution, well, that would be a claim that someone would need to back up. I would need to see a manifesto. I would need to see 10 atheistic commandments. There's just no such thing. It's not prescriptive. But getting back to poisoning the well, the same guy later in the conversation equated atheism with Holocaust denial. It was an evidential argument. He was saying basically anyone who denies, there are people out there who deny the Holocaust despite clear and present evidence. Likewise, there are people who disbelieve in the existence of God despite what he believes is clear and present evidence. The thing is, of course, this is an obvious poisoning of the well because there are a million different examples he could give where there's clear and present evidence for things, and it would be ridiculous to disbelieve in that. There's no need to use a highly emotionally charged, one of the most massive atrocities in human history where millions upon millions of people were mistreated and tortured and killed. There's just no reason to make that comparison except as an attempt to poison the well, except as an attempt to further tarnish the name of atheist and atheism, to replace images in people's heads with the Holocaust. Because I think people even jump the step when it comes to that. When you make the equivocation to Holocaust denial, people don't even think about the Holocaust denial. They think about the Holocaust. And I think that's an obvious attempt. I would be very interested to know what everyone thinks on the subject. Thanks as always for watching.